Hello everybody, I'm Liz, and I know that everyone's kind of over 2018 and talking about 2018, but I haven't talked about my favorite books that I read last year in 2018, so I'm going to do that before February wraps up, and then I'll focus solely on 2019, I promise guys. I was going to do my top 10 books of 2018, but I legitimately could not reduce my top 10 to top 10. So we're doing my top 11 books of 2018. So the first 8 books I'm going to talk about are in this top 11 list. They're not really specific in order, but I will have a top 3 at the end of the video for my ultimate top favorite books of 2018. First, we're going to journey back to the very first book I read in 2018, for Two Boys Kissing by David Levithan. This story is amazing. It's narrated by those whose lives were impacted by the AIDS epidemic of the 80s, whose lives were lost, as they're navigating these young teenagers who are gay and navigating high school. We have several main characters. One is in the closet about his homosexuality and he doesn't know how to handle his feelings, and so he's going through a really dark place. And then we have two boys who are very good friends. They used to be a couple but had recently broken up, and they still decided that they wanted to break the Guinness World Record for longest kiss. And so they started this off. It became an internet sensation as it goes off with all of these other gay characters, and the story was beautiful. I sobbed like a baby, and I love the writing. It's quick, simple, and short, but there's so much packed into it that my heart melted for these characters, and I will always look fondly to this book forever and ever. Next, we have a fantastic high fantasy book, Uprooted by Naomi Novik. This book has our main character, Aneshka, who essentially she believes that her best friend is going to be taken by the dragon, who's a wizard who abducts a girl from their town every 10 years. But instead she's taken and finds she has magical abilities which she's going to utilize to fight the curse and scourge of the realm, which is the dark wood that lives near their town. I absolutely adored this story. It was so interesting. I loved Dragon and Aneshka's dynamics, and just the way it wrapped up at the end, it was perfect. Next, we have the comic Saga by Brennan Vaughan and Fiona Staples. This series, I absorbed all released 9 volumes so quickly. I became obsessed with these characters. They're star-crossed lovers, essentially. They have a baby, and they're from different worlds and different societies that have been warring for centuries, and this union has caused a lot of panic between the rulers of the two worlds because they've never coexisted. They never thought they could coexist, and so this will break up this lucrative war, and they don't want this to get out, and so they are hunting them and hunting their baby, and it is just, it's so tragic. I cried and sobbed so many times reading these volumes, and I love them and adore them, and I am so sad that the rest of the story is on hiatus while these the author and illustrator go through other projects, and so I will be anxiously awaiting the next volume, watching it like a hawk. Next, we have Leah and the Offbeat by Becky Albertalli. And Becky Albertalli blew me away 2 years ago for Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda. I saw myself in Leah, especially me as a teenager, because Leah's bisexual. She's in the closet, but she wants to tell her friends, especially because Simon's out and proud. And she's having feelings for this girl, and it's so beautiful and so lovely, and I felt like I was reliving my high school experience reading this book, especially with the anxiety and the frustrations of being a senior and graduating and wondering if you're going to see your friends again as they go off to college and their after high school careers. And so I felt myself in this story so heavily, and I loved it so much. Next, we have a series that should not surprise you at all, and that is the Alloy Era, which is books 4, 5, and 6 in Brandon Sanderson's Mistborn series. I flew through these 3 books like I flew through Mistborn the year prior. Loved it so much. My favorite book out of these 3 are definitely The Bands of Mourning, which is book 6, because Cirrus really settles into herself in this book, and you can really see herself bloom and really show every character who she is, and she doesn't fault herself for who she is, and I love her so much. I see myself in her a lot too, with her organization, her preparedness, and her just the way she thinks about the world. And I just loved how suspenseful the story has gotten, as it's like the Mistborn series, only it's 300 years later, so it's a little steampunky because now there's guns. And the strength of the Mistborns and those with powers have definitely waned. All the bloods have been mixed, and so a lot of people don't have nearly as much powers, especially as the Barochemists and the Alchemists have merged bloodlines. And so it was a very interesting evolution to the Mistborn series that I adore and love, and I cannot wait until its conclusion, book 7, which does not have a release date yet. Next up is Leaving Time by Jodi Picoult. I fell in love with this story so much. It's about a girl who's looking for her mother who's been missing for 10 years, presumed dead, but she doesn't believe it. It goes into her mother's background and how she was really into elephant history and elephant biology and sociology and how elephants conduct themselves. They had an elephant sanctuary back when she went missing, and after that her father went into a really bad psychosis, delusions, and he's very much so not there. And it was so enthralling. I absolutely adored this story. It was very interesting how she interacts with an older detective PI and a psychic, and everything gets together and just meshes with a beautiful and wonderful story. And I will definitely be thinking about it from here on out. Next is certainly Obsidio, the last book in the Lumine Files by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. It's a wonderful space odyssey where people are getting their just desserts as a shady biotech company massacred so many people on a planet and a space station, and it was so glorious. I was on my seat with the countdown in this book, like its 2 predecessors, and I was just crossing my fingers hoping everybody survived this end-all battle back on Carenza 4, and I was so not disappointed. I'm going to love this series forever and reread it and enjoy the characters and their journey. Next up, we have Homegoing by Yad Jessie. This is a fantastic cross-generational story, and I don't always love stories that take place in multiple time periods, but loving the progression of 1700s Africa through American slavery generations and how it severely impacted African Americans, and then jumping also into the history of Africa and the culture of Africa, dealing with the slave trade and British conquering and empowerment, and just how they build themselves up as people. It was so breathtaking and crushed my heart so many times at the injustices these people had throughout these generations, and just 2 sisters being separated, one marrying a slave trader, the other one becoming a slave, and how each fundamentally changed their history and their generations and their children's lives. It was a story I will never forget. Now we have my top 3 books of 2018. First up, we have this beautiful gem, Genesis, by Bernard Beckett. I loved this scientific story and how everything gets torn apart and my mind is blown as things are just thrown at me. It takes place with our main character, Anaximander, who's undergoing a very rigorous test by the Academy, which is the ruler of this island that has isolated themselves for many, many, many years because a plague has devastated humans and humanity and the world as they know it. And so they've really tried to build this utopia on this island. And she really dives into the history of this island. It was so intensely interesting, and I could not believe my eyes reading this book. Then we have Being Mortal, Medicine and What Matters in the End by Atul Gawande. This book just really solidifies my career goal of becoming a doctor and really trying to make a difference in the world and how we address mortality and how we have those difficult discussions, whether you're involved because you're elderly or you have terminal cancer or some other type of terminal illness. It really brought to the forefront of my mind issues with nursing homes and how physicians talk to their patients, and I was just so blown away by the facts and the knowledge and the sheer information that is laid in front of me during this story, and I will always reference it whenever I'm struggling or anything going through my career journey and medical school. Last but certainly not least, this is The Astonishing Color of After by Emily X. Arpan. Undoubtedly probably the top #1 favorite read of all of last year because it's so beautiful and so breathtaking, and I loved immersing myself in Taiwan culture as our main character Lee goes to Taiwan after her mother's suicide to really make sense and reconcile all of these feelings of loss and grieving and reconnecting with her mother's parents that she's never seen before. And I just loved it so much. All the colors and the expression and the grief and the talks about depression and suicide in the book was amazing. I couldn't love it more. All right, there is my top 11 books that I read in 2018. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. Please let me know in the comments down below if you've read any of these books and loved them just as much as me, or if you didn't like them and why. In the comments below, just please talk to me, and also tell me what your favorite book was reading last year. What did you love so much that it made your heart soar? And I will see you guys next time. I love you. Bye.